My name is Chris, and I've always had a strange craving for abandoned places. Since childhood, I've been climbing dilapidated construction sites, old garages, and rusty hangar rooms that smelled of dust, rats, and time. I wasn't afraid of broken doors, damp in the corners, or the crunch of glass under my shoes. On the contrary, it all seemed to invite me inside. I never thought that I would be the one making this kind of trash for YouTube. It's just that one day my friend Nate, whom I met at Photo Forum, suggested making a video for his channel. He had a small blog about urban research, and he was just looking for someone who wouldn't be afraid to go where even metalheads with spray cans wouldn't risk lingering. We filmed a couple of episodes. We went down to an abandoned pumping station, climbed into an old cinema with broken chairs where someone had set up a hangout. Then Nate suggested something. Let's get serious. We'll spend the day at school. I chuckled at first. Well, school and school. What's wrong with her? It's not just abandoned. It's closed after events, he said suggestively. Which ones? He paused. Yes, there's a girl missing. About 10 years ago. After that, the bullshit started. Vandalism, threats on the walls, rumors started. Anyway, the school was closed. All the equipment was left behind. No one took anything out. I shook my head skeptically. I didn't believe in the stories about missing children. Someone probably went off the rails. The girl could have been stolen or worse. But what does the damn school have to do with it? But let's not do this paranormal stuff. He smiled. Only cameras, flashlights, and 24 hours. No tricks. We have started preparations. We checked the equipment. 2 GoPro cameras, 1 Canon SLR, a pair of power banks, 2 powerful headlamps, water, food, a first aid kit, 2 walkie-talkies. We took cots with us so we could sleep and an old radio just in case. The school was located on the outskirts of an industrial area. The fences have long since rusted. The passage to the courtyard is free. There was still a nameplate above the entrance, but the letters were partially knocked down. The building has 2 floors made of red brick, a typical building of the 60s. There's wild grass and forgotten flower beds all around. Everything looked like a dead organism that had once breathed, but now it was just rotting away. We arrived in the afternoon. To get inside, I had to open a boarded-up window on the ground floor. The doors were welded onto metal plates. Surprisingly, the inside smelled not of mold, but of dust and paper, as if no one had disturbed the air since then. We turned on the cameras, set up lanterns in the corridor, and began the inspection. The classrooms were empty. There was dust on the desks, notebooks were lying in some places, the covers were torn, but the inscriptions were preserved. Control, biology, right off Katia. I even came across a note folded into a triangle. He looks out the window every day. He chose me today. I handed it to Nate, who chuckled. Childish madness. Anything to tickle your nerves. We put one of the cameras on a tripod in the gym. The other is in the hallway leading to the staff room. We settled into the library ourselves. There was more space, and we put 2 folding beds next to the display cases where the books used to stand. The first few hours passed quietly. We ate sandwiches, drank water, and joked. At sunset, light began to pass through the broken windows, drawing strange reflections on the floor. I noticed that the air began to change. It was getting cold inside, even though it was summer. I put it down to the old walls and the lack of heating. But the cold was unpleasant, sharp. Around 9 p.m., Nate said he wanted to take a couple of shots outside. I stayed inside, setting up the batteries and making sure that the recordings went smoothly. 20 minutes passed. I took the walkie-talkie. Nate, do you copy? Silence. Reception. Please respond. There's a hiss in response. I went out into the hallway. Inside, everything was as before, only it seemed as if the sounds had become quieter. The hum of the street disappeared, as if the school had eaten it. I decided to go out into the courtyard, and then I heard a door slam in the hallway a little further away. Very loud. I stopped, trying not to show that my knees were shaking. Nate, is that you? I almost shouted. 0. Just my own echo. As if on cue, something crashed in one of the classrooms. I rushed there, my heart pounding in my throat. The camera recorded it all. The door to the biology room was ajar. I walked in slowly. It's empty inside. There was only a glass jar of formalin and a dead frog on the floor. She had obviously just fallen. I looked at the ceiling. There was an old fan, maybe a vibration? Or is there someone inside? I didn't call Nate on the radio anymore. I knew that no matter what was happening, it wasn't a coincidence. I went back to the library, closed the door, and sat down. Waited. I looked at the cameras, and everything was fine. Not a single movement. And then I realized that the camera had stopped transmitting the footage from a hallway. She switched off. If she didn't sit down, she passed out. She just went to zero. It was at this moment that I noticed a second piece of paper on the table. He wasn't here an hour ago. I remember exactly. It was old, slightly torn, but the ink was fresh. They wrote it by hand. You stayed. The others left. Look in the teacher's closet. I could feel my body getting covered in sticky sweat. I have a walkie-talkie, a flashlight, and a camera with me. I got up. The library seemed like a different place to me now. I went out and walked down the hallway. The dust no longer seemed harmless. It seemed to be moving. It was as if someone had just walked in front of me and picked it up. Going to the staff room, I opened the closet, which was partially open. There was an old, worn-out videotape and another note. Watch to the end. Just once. I was standing in front of this cabinet, looking at a videotape that someone had obviously put there recently. The dust around it was untouched, but the tape itself looked unnaturally clean. She couldn't have lain there for 10 years. The plastic was intact. The sticker hadn't faded. Someone was here before me. Or with me. Thoughts were spinning in my head. Maybe Nate had set all this up? Decided to play a prank? But he's not like that. Yes, he likes to create suspense, but not through toss-ups. We always agreed, no lies, everything we shoot must be real. And where did he go? He didn't get in touch, he didn't use his phone, although I knew for sure that he had taken it. The paranoia was growing. I picked up the tape and walked slowly towards the library, where I had left a generator and an old TV with a built-in video player, in case I could find some old school records. We connected it for the sake of atmosphere, not thinking that we would really need it. And now, I was holding a black plastic box in my hand, as if it were the key to everything that was happening. I inserted the tape and turned on the TV. The screen vibrated, showing blue static, then a picture appeared. There was a sharp, dry click, and the shooting began. The camera was shaking. Someone was filming from a hallway of the school, almost in the same place where I was a few hours ago. The video was dark and grainy, as if it had been shot on an old phone or portable camera. Someone was walking down the hallway, breathing heavily in the frame. Suddenly, the camera turned and showed the door of the staff room, exactly the one where I had just found the tape. It was ajar. The hand reached for the handle and slowly pushed it. It was dark inside, but something strange flashed in the frame, as if a man was sitting in the corner. I couldn't make out the face, but the pose was strange. He just sat there and stared at the wall. The camera didn't come any closer. The voiceover whispered, "You're still here, aren't you?" Then the screen twitched, the image crawled, as in the old rewind. Then a black screen. I was waiting. Nothing. Just silence. No labels, no ending, no sound. I rewound it, rewatched it. It's all the same. The video lasted about 2 minutes, but it felt like I'd been watching it for half an hour. My fingers were shaking, and my heart was pounding in my throat. What was that? The played fragment. Who filmed it? Why did you leave it? I turned off the TV, and it was at that moment that I heard a click, quiet but distinct. He turned around. Someone passed through the glass of a library. Quickly, a shadow. But it wasn't the figure from a horror stories. I definitely saw the hood. It was a man. The real one. Someone was in the building. I rushed to the exit, ran down the corridor, turned the corner. It was empty. No footsteps, no doors. Everything seemed to have died out, but I knew I wasn't alone. My mind was starting to malfunction, and I began to doubt my own feelings. I went back, closed the library door from the inside, and pulled the table up to it. I checked the batteries on all the devices just in case. One of the cameras was showing movement, the gym. I clicked on the screen, and someone passed by in the background of the hall. Definitely a human being. Nate, or someone else. I grabbed a flashlight and headed there. Every step was a roar in his skull. The walls seemed to shrink. The gym door was open. The light from a lantern picked out only dusty beams, broken ropes, and a creaking wooden floor. I went in. Empty. But the camera showed that there was movement. I moved closer to the tripod, and the camera was working, and the flashing LED confirmed it. I looked around. And then I noticed something strange in the corner, folded sleeping bags. Not ours. The dust next to them was disturbed. Someone spent the night here recently, or he's sleeping over right now. One of the bags had a sticker with the name Dylan on it. I didn't know anyone by that name. I opened the zipper, and inside there was a can opener, a half empty bottle of water, a package of pills, and a piece of paper with crooked handwriting. Don't go to the basement at night. If you're reading this, it means I didn't have time to leave. Basement? We didn't even know there was a basement here. None of the maps of the building that we looked at mentioned it. I took the note and put it in my pocket. I didn't want to go back to the library. I felt that there was less and less time left. Someone was nearby, watching, moving, and silent. It was worse than any screams that I decided to check all the floors. The second one was blocked on the stairs. Someone had barricaded it from the inside with a metal cabinet. I didn't break it down. The noise would have attracted attention. Instead, we went to the opposite part of the ground floor. There were utility rooms, toilets, and, as it turned out later, a door to a technical room. It was tightly closed, but there was an old lock with a broken lock. Inside, there are steps down. It smelled of damp earth and musty air. The basement was real. I went down, feeling the air getting thicker. The flashlight illuminated a narrow corridor with concrete walls, old wiring covered with cobwebs, and a door marked archive. I pushed it open with a dull creak. There were boxes on the shelves. They were dusty, but many had been opened. I pulled one out. There are photos inside. The old ones, the school ones. Cool pictures, teachers, some kind of meetings. And among them is a shot that made my heart pound. I was on it. A young man, 10 years younger, standing at the blackboard. I've never attended this school. And I hadn't been here before that day that I was sitting on the concrete floor, holding that photo in my hands, and trying to realize what was in front of me. It was impossible. I had never been to this place. I've never stood at this board. I've never worn the shirt I was wearing in the picture. But the face, the expression, the mole under the eye, it was all mine. There was no date or signature on the back of the photo, just a small dark scratch in the corner. I looked at the rest of the photos from a box. Everything was made in this school. Teachers, students, rulers, holidays. Everything looked quite normal, but the faces. Some of the faces were repeated. The same guy was in different class photos, in different groups, with different teachers, but at the same age. It looks like I am. Someone was collecting these frames. Someone systematically put them in boxes. There were no signatures, but the order clearly existed. I returned the pictures to their place, even though everything inside screamed for me to burn them and leave. But it was too late. I already knew too much. He got in too deep. There was a battered notebook on the shelf next to it. I opened it, expecting anything, but there were notes. With a pen, everything is in English, illegible, as if someone wrote in a hurry. The transitions are abrupt, there are no dates, but the thought was traced. I thought I could figure out why they were doing this. I thought I could find someone who would explain. But there are no rules here. There is no logic here. Repeat only. Day after day. I remember the first time I walked in. I was sure I was just renting a building. And now, every time I open my eyes, I'm back in that hallway. I tried to get out. I tried to break down the doors. I tried to set fire to the archive. He stays anyway. Even when I break it, it's whole after an hour. I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. It could be crazy. Paranoia. Maybe someone just went crazy, locked themselves in school, and started writing this nonsense. But then why was I in the photo? I heard a thud from above. Not a voice, not footsteps, but as if someone had dropped a metal object. It sounded like hitting an iron cabinet. I turned off the flashlight, sat down, and held my breath. After a minute again. It's getting closer to the stairs. I got up and walked back to the basement exit. When I got to the door and looked out, there was no one on the stairs. But the footsteps are already upstairs. I climbed slowly, step by step. When I went out to the first floor, I realized that all the lights that we had installed through the extension cords had been turned off. The generator? I rushed to the library. The lock on the door was broken, and the inside was empty. The table I'd pulled over was lying on its side. The cameras were gone. All three of them. The monitor was lying on the floor. The screen was cracked. I grabbed my hair. It's impossible. I didn't hear anyone. No one came out. No one could carry it all away in such a short time. But it happened. I ran through the halls, checking class after class, but nothing. Everything seems to be cleaned out. In only one office, it was written on the blackboard with a white marker, "You knew you'd come back." I didn't write it. I didn't know I'd be here. But someone knew. Someone was waiting. I sat down on the floor and felt really tired for the first time. Not just physically, but internally. It's like I've been squeezed out. My head was buzzing, and my eyelids felt heavy. I wanted to sleep, but I was afraid to close my eyes. I thought if I did that, I wouldn't wake up here. Or vice versa, I'll never wake up. The night is not over yet. I checked my watch, and my phone was dead. I didn't know what time it was. It's dark outside, as if the world has stopped. I went to the medical center. I thought there might be leftovers, or at least water. It was clean and sterile inside. Abnormally clean, like for an abandoned place. There was a medical record book on the table. I flipped through the usual notes, but one name flashed often, Dylan T., the same one that was on the bag at the gym. I found a card with his details. The column, date of last visit, was empty. No numbers, no time. Just a bold horizontal line. No other card with a similar mark. I scrolled back. Records of checkups, headaches, and insomnia complaints. And finally, I woke up in the gym, not remembering how I got there. Disorientation. I locked the door for the night. I woke up in the director's office this morning. The recording is done by hand by the patient himself. He wrote on his own card. It wasn't nonsense, it was a cycle. Replay, but not mystical. Someone real, created the conditions for a person to lose their sense of time, place, and identity. It wasn't supernatural, it was someone's game. Or a method. I left the infirmary and went to the director's office. It was one of the few rooms that Nate and I hadn't explored. The lock was old and rusty. I kicked it out. It was dark inside, but my flashlight was still on. There's an old dictaphone on the table. The tape is inside. I click play. I don't remember how many times I said that. But if you're listening, it means you're already inside. School doesn't keep you. You're holding yourself together. The question is, how much more evidence do you need to leave? If you can, go out through the north entrance. The signal is not jammed there. And don't come back. Never. His voice was hoarse and broken. I didn't know whose it was, but it sounded like a last chance. I turned around and walked away. Don't run. Quietly, as if any movement could wake something up. The north entrance was further down the corridor behind the changing rooms. We didn't touch it, we thought it had collapsed. I reached it. Heavy iron door. I pulled and it opened, cold air in the face. Fresh. Alive. I went out, and he turned around. The school stood as before. Empty. Silent. With windows that looked like eyes. But now I knew it had never been just a building. She was a machine. And someone turned it on over and over again that I was standing outside on the cracked asphalt, looking at the building I had just left. It seemed to me that it was watching. Not with my eyes, not through the windows, just with my presence. I don't know how long I stood there, listening to my own breathing and the buzzing in my ears. It felt strangely like I hadn't left the school, but had just taken a step into another part of it. It's like the whole neighborhood is her too. I walked down the path to the car. He walked around it carefully, holding the flashlight in his hand, even though the battery was almost dead. The car was parked as I had left it. The doors are locked. The windows are intact. I opened the driver's door and got in. I turned the key and the engine started the first time. The radio turned on, silence. No signal, no noise, just a dull background. It's like someone cut off the antenna that I turned on the near one, turned around and drove, trying not to look in the mirror. I had a clear feeling that if I turned around, I would see something that I shouldn't. Not a figure, not a face. It's just wrong. In half an hour, the first pointer will appear. Civilization. Lights outside the window, signs, trucks. It was as if the world had become real again. I stopped at a gas station, got out, and just stood under the lamp, feeling its cold light give me a sense of reality. I went inside, bought water and a chocolate bar, and tried to talk to the cashier. He glanced at me as if I had come in the wrong way. I looked bad. Dusty clothes, dirt on his hands, circles under his eyes. I haven't slept in almost 24 hours. I didn't eat. I didn't say. When I finally got home, the first thing I did was check my camera. The memory card was empty. 0 files. Not a single photo. I opened the back cover. The card was there working, just erased. It wasn't even deleted, but it was as if it had never been used. I checked my phone and it was the same. The camera was turning on, but the entire gallery was empty. Not a single picture, not a single video, not a single hint that I was there at all. I sat in the dark of the apartment, listening to the sounds of the street. The noise of the engine, the barking of dogs, the screams of drunks, an ordinary night. It all seemed strangely far away. It's like I've returned to another world. I tried to fall asleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Empty corridors, stairs, and faded photos rose before my eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about what the voice on the recorder was saying. "You're holding yourself together." What does it mean? What was I looking for there? Why didn't you leave earlier? The next day, I went to see Nate. He lived alone, in a one-room apartment on the 3rd floor. The door was locked. I rang and knocked, but no one answered. I went downstairs, found the manager, and lied that Nate hadn't been in touch for a couple of days. We went up together. He opened it with a spare key. It was clean inside. Too much, actually. Everything is laid out in its place. Not a single speck of dust, as if no one had ever lived here. Only in the corner is a backpack, the one he came to the shoot with. I checked it. There's nothing inside. There were no clothes, no chargers, not even any documents. As he moved out, I asked the manager. He shrugged his shoulders. "This one. You're the first one who mentioned it. You're the only one who rented a studio here a month ago." I almost dropped my backpack. I remembered how he and Nate had talked on the phone. I remembered how he wrote me the route. We had correspondence, calls, audio. I took out my phone, but nothing happened. Not a single message. No contact named Nate. Just an empty call history. I went to our editor, Tom. He was sitting in the studio, as usual, and yawning, editing some clips for customers. I flew into him. "Do you remember Nate?" He looked at me in surprise. "What Nate?" "We went to school with him. We filmed it all. Do you remember when I gave you the source code?" Tom shrugged his shoulders. "Listen, maybe you need to rest. You haven't brought anything for a month. I already thought you'd given up on everything." I went outside, sat on a bench, and just sat there. It was sunny. People were passing by, and no one, absolutely no one, knew that I had just returned from there. No one knew who I had lost. Even I wasn't sure if Nate even existed anymore. Only that photo remains. The only one I managed to hide in my jacket and forget. I took it out and looked at it again. My figure. The same shape, the same smile. There's a blackboard in the back. There was something written on it in chalk, almost erased, but when I looked closely, I could make it out. I was sitting with this photo in my hands, as if with the last reminder of something that I couldn't fully explain myself. "You're next." It would seem to be an ordinary chalk inscription on an old board, perhaps left decades ago. But I knew she wasn't there when I took this picture. I remember it was empty, clean green surface. Then I just caught the frame, for the sake of composition. And now, I burned the photo. He just went into the kitchen, lit a corner with a match, and threw it into the metal sink. The paper shriveled, turned black, and crumbled into ashes, and I felt my heart lose its rhythm for the first time in 24 hours. I wasn't afraid. I was angry. It seemed to me that all this was a mockery. Above me, above common sense. But I was even more angry that I wanted to go back. Not out of curiosity, but out of emptiness. I couldn't just leave it as it was. This school, it's like it sucked me inside. Not physically, but mentally. And the further I got away from her, the more tempted I became to return. Understand. Complete. I held on for a week. I slept for 2 hours, went outside to avoid being confined to 4 walls, and tried to talk to my friends, but it didn't help. I found myself searching the internet for references to old buildings, school plans, and the names of teachers that flashed on the signs. I was looking for something, but there was nothing. No articles, no photos, no news. It's like the school is a phantom, a mirage that disappears as soon as you turn away. On the 8th day, I couldn't stand it. I refueled the car, took only food, water, and a second dictaphone with me. This time without a camera, without a team. Just me. I just wanted to make sure it was real, that the building exists, that I'm not going crazy, that I drove for a long time, checking the road from memory. I repeated the route, marked turns, landmarks. And here is the same country road again. Abandoned houses, scorched fields, dilapidated barns. Then there was a dense forest through which light barely penetrated. And finally a twist. But there was no school. I drove a little further, stopped, got out of the car. In the place where there used to be concrete steps and rusty doors, now there was just a field. Tall grass, broken bricks in the ground, but no walls, no windows. Even the foundation. I walked around the site, nothing. Only a couple of broken metal posts, probably from a fence. I stood and looked at this place, as if trying to recall something that would confirm. Yes, you were here, you came in, you spent 24 hours inside. But it's all gone. Not in the fog. Not in mysticism. It's just gone. Erased. When I returned to the car, I saw a piece of paper on the hood. A neatly folded sheet, pressed with a sliver. I looked around, but there was no one there. No cars, no people. He opened the paper. Just one line. The handwriting was painfully familiar. Of mine. You've already been there. Don't repeat it. I did not return home. I got in the car and went to my father's place. He lived in the suburbs. He had an old house with a porch and a view of the lake. We rarely talked, but that evening I just sat with him on the veranda, poured myself a whiskey, and didn't say anything. He didn't ask. I do not know what exactly happened then. Maybe my memory is playing with me, maybe stress, maybe fatigue. But there was a school. I remember every creak, every hall, the smell of chalk, the creaking of floorboards. I remember being afraid, holding my breath, and hearing my own footsteps. Everything was real. And now all I have left is an empty voice recorder without one recording. Erased. The memory card is empty. There are no photos. There are no contacts. There are zero traces. But every night, when I fall asleep, I think about this inscription on the board. I think that's why I went there. I think that I would have come back anyway, even knowing how it would end. And that's what's scary. I'd do it again. Not out of a desire for fame. Not out of a thirst to discover something. It's because I haven't felt alive anywhere since. Everything now seems fake, like cheap decorations. People are like actors. Cities are like layouts. And that school was real. Eerily real. Now I live knowing that somewhere out there was a place that erased everything except me. And sometimes when it's very quiet outside at night, I hear a door creaking somewhere in the back of my mind. Not from the wind. It's like someone's still waiting for me to come back.